Before we take a look at what's in today's Russian papers, just a quick word about why I think there's still value in doing just that, looking at what's in the Russian papers. Yes, the media landscape here is heavily controlled by the state, but the papers still provide a kind of window on what is happening inside Russia, on what those in power here may be thinking, and sometimes there are surprises, like last week's Kommersant interview with a former Indian diplomat warning Moscow against going nuclear in Ukraine. So what about today? Well, there's a lot of Vladimir Putin. It's his 72nd birthday. Big article about him in Moskovsky Komsomolets. Now, Russia's full-scale invasion of its neighbour has brought death and destruction to Ukraine on a massive scale. But today, this paper calls what Putin is doing constructive destruction, claiming that Russia's president is convinced that by blowing up the antiquated world order, Russia is engaged in constructive destruction, the construction of a new world order on the ruins of the old. After more than 2.5 years of war in Ukraine, this is how the Kremlin is trying to frame what is happening now as a battle for a new international order. Just how destructive will Russia be? Well, Nezavisomaya Gazeta has this editorial today, Russian Roulette next to Russia's red lines. The discussions about whether Ukraine will be allowed to attack Russia with Western long-range weapons will continue in Germany, a reference to next week's meeting in Ramstein between NATO allies and President Zelensky. The piece points out that Putin recently warned that strikes on Russia with long-range missiles will signify NATO's participation in the conflict. He gave a reminder of the so-called red lines that shouldn't be crossed. It's well known that in Russian roulette there is one bullet in the barrel of the revolver. The West is probably hoping that, for whatever reason, out of a sense of responsibility for the fate of the world, humanitarian reasons, or simply due to fear, that this bullet is a blank. I expect the closer we get to the Ramstein meeting and to the US election next month, the more Moscow will be talking about alleged red lines. Meanwhile, according to the government paper Rossiyskaya Gazeta, the US ambassador to Washington, Anatoly Antonov, has completed his posting and has returned to Russia. Thumbs up, but not for US-Russian relations, which Antonov says are rusting over and falling apart. And back to Komsomolets, which reports that to boost the birth rate, one Russian MP has proposed student mortgages. At the same time, once again, there is talk of potentially bringing back the tax on childlessness in Russia.